Hey, welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast. This is John, and with me tonight is Ryan.
Hello.
Hey there, Ryan. How are you? Looks like your Twitter handle is at Braun Dwarf, which is cool. Maybe I'll start following you.
That would be great if you could.
We are getting together tonight to talk about the Vanity Fair Last Jedi article and photographs that released on Wednesday, the day before the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. So that was a cool 39 years and 355-day anniversary kind of surprise. I love the Vanity Fair articles, and they've been doing them for the last four, now five saga Star Wars films. And earlier in the week, I was hoping to get together with you and some other Blockade runners and maybe go through and talk about all the various Vanity Fair issues from 99 on. I thought maybe it'd be fun to go back and look at the issue from 99 and the issue from 2002 and see kind of look at the photos, but also I bet if we comb through those articles, we could find some interesting perspectives on those Star Wars movies as they were coming out or about to come out.
For sure. I do actually. I believe I have copies of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
They are very far away from me right now, though. They are in storage about halfway across the country, unfortunately.
Yeah, mine are in storage about halfway across town, I think, at my father-in-law's house. I need to grab those. But I was able to find at least 2 or 3 of them online. But that was on Tuesday, or I think it was Tuesday, when they announced that the Vanity Fair article would be coming out Wednesday. So I thought, oh my gosh, we should do a Vanity Fair Star Wars issues episode. And then on Wednesday, I read the article and saw the photos from the Last Jedi Vanity Fair issue, and I thought, you know what? We don't have time to talk about all those other old Vanity Fair issues, because this one is really cool and there's a bunch of interesting stuff in there. So tonight I want to just kind of go through the main article, probably take a peek at the photos as well. And then there's actually a couple of articles that I'm guessing some of you maybe have not seen, because I barely knew they existed. They're not advertised really in the same way that the main one is. So we'll get to that too. And there's some interesting stuff in those. But why don't we go ahead and sort of dig in here? I put together notes on what I thought were kind of the most interesting kind of quotes and tidbits from the article. So I just kind of want to go through them and discuss those. And the first one that I pulled out that I thought was really interesting was Mark Hamill on the ending of The Force Awakens. So I pulled this quote when he says, now remember, one of the plots in the earlier films was the telepathic communication between my sister and me. So I thought Carrie will sense that Han's in danger and try to contact me, and she won't succeed. And in frustration, she'll go herself. Then we're in a situation where all 3 of us are together, which is one of my favorite things in the original film when we're on the Death Star. It's just a fun dynamic to it. So I thought it would be more effective, and I still feel this way, though it's just my opinion, that Leia would make it as far as she can, and right when she's apprehended, maybe even facing death, ba-boom, I come in and blow the guy away, and the 2 of us go to where Han is facing off with his son, but we're too late. And the reason that's important is that we witness his death, which carries enormous personal resonance into the next picture. As it is, Chewie's there, and how much can you get out of a Chewbacca whale and 2 people who have known Han for 20 minutes? So that's Mark Hamill, I think, just kind of off the cuff, freestyling there, sharing his attitude toward the ending of The Force Awakens. How did you react to that when you read that quote, Ryan?
I think that's cool. I mean, I would probably, I'd probably love seeing that in the theater. But as I've said many times, to you in private and on this show, I'm a huge fan of just about every decision made for The Force Awakens, and I think the path they chose was a little more unexpected, and um, maybe not the easiest or most gratifying path, but I think it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction to that, number one, is like that would be very dramatic to have all three of them there together again.
Mhm.
And I've heard a lot of discussion from people online and on podcasts and stuff saying like it's a missed opportunity because we'll never have the big three together again on screen.
Mhm.
And I can respect that, and I can definitely
Mhm.
understand where that attitude comes from. But at the same time, I personally kind of feel like you need to let the story, as the creatives behind The Force Awakens and now The Last Jedi, the story, I think you need to put the story first and let the story develop and find itself and become what it needs to be. And I feel like, kind of the way that Mark Hamill, who of course is Luke Skywalker, so what he says goes to a certain extent, but I just feel like the attitude there is like putting, you shouldn't start with what would be cool to see and then try to get the story to find its way there. I think you should
Mhm.
let the story develop and become what it is and say what is in best service of the story. And that's how you avoid things like Dr. Evazan and Panda Baba on Jeddah in Rogue One, like the super fan servicey things. That's not what
Yeah.
should drive your story.
Yeah.
And I think, the Vanity Fair article refers to the ending of The Force Awakens as like an already iconic cinematic moment in which, like a cinema history was made. That might be a little hyperbolic, but it's an amazing moment. And I feel like you could have had what would have been the more, as you said, more expected kind of conclusion there with the big three together again one last time. But then we couldn't have had the moment we did have at the end of Force Awakens. So
Right.
I can see where Mark Hamill's coming from, but I'm hoping that he is able to engage in a very heroic scene like that, maybe in The Last Jedi, and we can have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Not I mean, but like he does come around in the article if I remember correctly, like he does he does say that the ending they chose was for the best, right?
Yeah, I think he said, "I've never been so happy to have been proven wrong," and that
Yeah.
JJ was right, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe like in a bigger picture way is kind of the context he was making that comment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, obviously he knows about, what's going down in episodes 8 and likely 9. Um, so I think for the big picture, it was probably a good call.
Yeah, I think absolutely it was. It was definitely a good call. It's just interesting to hear like, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself kind of saying, we could have gone another route and that's what I would have chosen. So, but we never got our Force Awakens making of book, so it's cool to get like at least a couple of those kind of candid
Mhm.
quotes like that. And I
Mhm.
and I expressed on this show, and we've talked about it, like the Force Awakens, the extras on the Blu-ray, I felt like they were cool, but they were also very safe and very PR, kind of like very PR kind of vibe to them. It was all marketing, and this is a little more raw. Like, hey,
Mhm.
let me tell you how I really feel about it. So it's cool on that level.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump into Kylo Ren. I went through chronologically, so this is kind of the next part that I pulled out. Adam Driver talking about Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi. And it says Adam Driver alluding both to Finn's state and the scar seen on his own face in the trailer told me, I feel like almost everyone is in that rehabilitation state. I don't think that patricide is all it's cracked up to be. Maybe that's where Kylo Ren is starting from. His external scar is probably as much as an internal one. And I love that quote because, I feel like at the end of The Force Awakens with Kylo Ren, there's it's ambiguous. Did he become more powerful by choosing this path and murdering his father, or did something else happen? And so to hear that, the reverberations and the effects of that choice are going to be with him in The Last Jedi, I think is what we'd expect, but also, it's just good to hear that that's the case.
Yeah. Adam Driver is such an interesting dude.
Mm.
Like, like every time I see him, like behind the scenes, or read an interview with him or anything, like I'm always like, you're always like half like, is this dude like some like total like arty, like bohemian, like um I don't know, like James Franco, like type dude, or is he just like this total like goofball too? That's like legitimately hilarious, and I think it's both. Like, I think he's like a super like artistic and like introspective guy, but he's also like really funny
Mm-hmm.
too. And so that, I mean, that's just I don't know, that's just cool. Like I was reading this quote, I like read it like 3 times. I'm like, okay, like that's an interesting thing to say about all of this. Like,
Yeah, for sure. And there's another article on Vanity Fair that's been, people have been quoting and making little, kind of attention grabbing articles about where, I guess Mark Hamill, I don't know if you saw this one or not, but Mark Hamill invited him to lunch. He's like, hey, I was your uncle. My character was your character's uncle. And, we probably spent some time together when you were a kid. And, if you want to like hang out sometime, we could go, get to know each other a little bit. And I guess Adam Driver declined to do that. And Mark Hamill said he's just like super moody on set, but not in a critical way, just like in a, oh yeah, he's very interesting and he's his own, like he's really kind of very focused as an actor. And, I was reading between the lines, like he's not really there to make friends necessarily. He's there to be like, take his part very seriously and kind of really throw himself into it. So, but I thought that was funny because Mark Hamill is like everybody's hero, and Adam Driver's this young guy. He's younger than we are, There's not too many people on the planet, I feel like, that would tell Luke Skywalker, like, no thanks, I don't want to, hang out with you.
Yeah, like method actor is definitely a term that I feel like comes up a lot with him. And I also saw another, I don't know where this was from too, but they were talking about how I think it was like John Boyega was talking about like how they kept trying to like crack the shell, and they were like going up and like giving him hugs and stuff. And like he would just, the quote was like, he would just stand there until it was over.
Yeah, totally. That quote made me love John Boyega that much more, because he's like, I just started hugging him. And yeah, I think this is the same article. Okay. And the interviewer asked him like, what does he do? Oh, he just stands there and waits for it to be over. But I love that. So
yeah.
And it's a super obvious thing that the scar would be symbolic of like his pain and that the trauma that he must be dealing with as a result of killing his own father. But it's cool to hear them talk about it in that way too, because there's been so much discussion, and I feel like who cares, and it's really goofy that anybody's really spending time on this. But there's been so much discussion of well, the scar moved, and was that the right choice to make or not? I don't know if you've seen that or not, but the placement of the scar in The Force Awakens, which you barely see it, but that scar is like right up the center of his forehead, like, and across his nose. And in The Last Jedi, it's over to the one side a little bit so that it looks a little less goofy. And that's a choice that Rian Johnson made, because he was like, it looked kind of goofy, so I moved it. And believe it or not, there are some people who are a little bit upset about that. Like, don't you go moving my scar. So,
is this the next tall Luke?
It could be. Yeah. So it's just like with all the trivial conversation that's been going on with the scar, it's cool to see some legit discussion of it too. The first two there are just, I think, like kind of interesting comments, but also maybe, at least with the Kylo Ren one, pretty expected. But the next one is really interesting, and has sent me kind of off thinking about where this could go. Ryan Johnson on his writing process talked about writing the names of each of the characters and thinking what's the hardest thing they could be faced with. Like he said, basically he had a sheet of paper and he wrote down, Rey, what is the most difficult challenge she could face? Finn, what is the most difficult challenge she could face? And that's where he started developing ideas for the plot for The Last Jedi. And so I think that's exciting. I mean, it could lead to a movie that's pretty tough or pretty dark. But that's really exciting. And I don't know. I feel like with Rey, clearly she's going to face some really difficult challenges, but it's interesting to stop and think about, like, well, what does that mean for Finn? What does that mean for Poe Dameron? What does that mean for Kylo Ren? For them, what does it mean for Luke Skywalker to have to face like the most difficult challenge that they could face?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, we always think of, like, Star Wars is a trilogy. There's the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, now this sequel trilogy. And, you always, and I remember kind of going into Attack of the Clones in the same way. Like, it's always like, well, this has to be the Empire Strikes Back of the this particular trilogy. You have to have that Empire Strikes Back there, where and I mean, I guess that's just storytelling when you're, and this is more like long form, like you need to introduce a lot of conflicts and give that almost that feeling of like the dejected, almost but not quite hopeless feeling there. And so when I was reading this, I was just like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what they're going for here. I mean, but the way he was so intentional about it is interesting, and it's I think those are interesting questions that we're obviously going to see answered in this film. But like, okay, so what exactly is it? Like when I think for Rey, I don't know, maybe her parentage, something with that, with Finn, maybe his past with the First Order, catching up with him, having a moment of doubt about is this whole resistance thing for me? Is this really what I want to do? Like maybe he'll see like side of the resistance or a more gray area of the resistance, and question like, wait, maybe there were some things that I was part of the First Order for a reason. I mean, maybe that Poe Dameron, maybe like his leadership, especially that's something I think about a lot with reading the comics, which the Poe Dameron comic I really love. And it really paints him as like the leader of this crew, and he feels this sense of like responsibility for every one of his crewmates in his squadron. And I would think maybe something with that for him, some challenges or fatalities or whatever within there. So
yeah,
I don't know, what do you think?
Well, no, I mean, that could be really interesting with Poe Dameron, because he is like the leader of the Black Squadron, and yeah, he not necessarily, I mean, he's connected to BB-8, but other than that, and he's connected to Leia for sure. And I think you can tell that more through the comics and stuff than you can necessarily through The Force Awakens. But I think he has a pretty close relationship with Leia for sure. So there, could be something there. But yeah, definitely the cost of war, that sort of thing. I could definitely see that theme or that motif or whatever being expressed through Poe Dameron's character for sure. I think with Luke and Rey, I'm kind of a one note sort of voice on the whole Luke thing. But I feel like for Luke, it's going to be the most challenging thing for him is going to be, coming back from the trauma of what happened at the Jedi Temple and choosing to re-engage. For Rey, it could be as simple as, hey, I just met my hero, Luke Skywalker. And this is all based on the comments from Ryan Johnson and Ray, Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill at Celebration.
Mm-hmm.
But, I just met my hero and he doesn't want to train me and he's not that cool. It could be that. Maybe that's what it is initially. And then by the end of the film, it has something to do with where she comes from. Or, since her and Kylo Ren are definitely brother and sister, maybe it's something to do with like, my own brother killed my dad in The Force Awakens, that kind of thing. I don't know.
Definitely. Confirmed.
Yeah. But no, Kylo Ren, I could see, I don't know. I have to wonder what's going to happen with him in long term. What's going to happen with the relationship between him and Snoke? What's going to happen with him if he and Leia are on screen together? I'm a little bit afraid that might not come to fruition. If it, maybe it was planned to be something that happens in 9 rather than 8, and now we're not going to get that. But I think, something to do with Kylo Ren and Princess Leia together again would be, a significant challenge for him. So, but I just think Ryan Johnson is so such a thoughtful guy that, him sitting down and asking those questions, I think we're gonna get some really good stuff out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we kind of get into more of the like fun revelations, or at least this next one I think is a really fun and like super interesting revelation. Talking about Octo, which Kevin and I were talking the other day. I hear more than anything else, I hear people refer to that planet as Octu or Achtu. And I don't understand that. I feel like the first time I saw that word, I was like, oh, it's Octo. So I don't know. I'm really hoping that the planet is named in the film in dialogue so we can get a definitive answer. How is that pronounced? I should ask Pablo Hidalgo. I'm sure he'd love that. But anyway, the caretaker creatures of Octo that are referenced here. The author, David Kemp, writes that Luke, it transpires, has been living in this village among an indigenous race of caretaker creatures whom Johnson is loath to describe in any more detail, except to say that they are not Ewoks. And I thought that was a major bombshell. I mean, it's probably a small element of the film and of Octo, but my mind just immediately starts racing with possibilities there for, what are these creatures? What are they? So I don't know. Do you have any guesses as to who these caretaker creatures are on Octo?
Wat Tambors.
That's why there's so many of them, because they can never communicate dependably, right? There's like, if one is stopping to tune his radio, then another one can step in and take over.
I think it's probably, I'm assuming it's going to be like a new species, something we haven't seen before. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for sure. Part of me is wondering, is it something really simple like there's been a lot of discussion of the birds, like the puffin. They're not puffins, but like the birds that are native to Skellig Michael and to Ireland in that area, and like you see in some of the set photos and stuff that there's these birds. And then if you watch Star Wars Rebels or kind of pay attention to some of that extraneous material, there's I think they're called converies, which are like and they were in Clone Wars too. It's almost like an owl, like a bird-like creature, silent, doesn't speak or anything, but they'll kind of show up in certain places. So I thought of that. Maybe it's something like that. I feel like maybe it makes more sense for it to be not humanoid and no dialogue, maybe like more like the relationship between a human being and an animal than like a race of little Yodas or something on Octo. I don't know that it would necessarily make sense for Luke to be hanging out having conversations or like anything like that. I feel like if it was more of an animal type species, that could be cool. But the idea that those creatures were there, probably thousands of years ago or longer, when those beehive huts were built by whatever Jedi were there originally. That's interesting. That it's almost like an eternal or sort of like historical race that's maybe been connected to that place and to the Jedi that have, been there throughout history. I think that's an interesting idea, but you have to stop and wonder, like, is this like a visual dictionary type character or creature where it's like, I know about it because I bought the visual dictionary and I saw it in the movie, but it was there and gone? Or is it like something significant to the story?
Probably the former.
Yeah, probably
is my guess. Yeah.
Probably, but it's still pretty fun, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah. I mean, you want that, obviously we're all like, I mean, we're turning up on day one to see the story moving forward, but what gives the Star Wars movies longevity and the reasons we watch them dozens and hundreds of times is because of all those like little extraneous details and identifying all of this stuff. So I mean, I think it could, in the film, it could just be a very small part, but I think there's there will probably be at least a novel and a comic series written about them.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll have like 18 different action figures and yeah. So
yeah,
I think we may not get a lot of it, whatever they are in the film, but we'll get a lot eventually.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And I mean, like for me, even if we don't, like for me, one of my favorite things about The Force Awakens is Lor San Tekka and the suggestion of, or just the planting of the seed of the Church of the Force. And I know nothing about that, but it's just such a cool, it's like a weighty mythic element that is just, I mean, that's, and it's almost better that I don't know that much about it, and I want to know more about it, but I don't want to know that much more about it. And so if there's like these little creatures on Ahch-To that have significance and importance, but it's never spelled out for me, that's maybe almost like, I don't want to know where Yoda comes from. I don't want to know what species he is. Like, I know as much as I need to know about Yoda, so I'm okay with like, even if they do seem, even if they are insignificant to most viewers or, whatever it may be, there's a way to suggest importance without spelling it out. And I would be fine with that too. So cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Luke Skywalker. Our last episode of this show was all about Luke Skywalker, but there's some pretty good quotes here from Rian Johnson and from Oscar Isaac about Luke. Rian Johnson says that Mark Hamill shows a very different side of the Luke character. And that's the kind of comment that makes me nervous. I mean, excited, but also like a little nervous because I want Luke to remain my hero. Again, I'm very one note on this issue, but that's where I am. But then Oscar Isaac follows up by saying, it's the fulfillment of where your imagination would take you when you imagine where Luke would go or what he's become. So then that comment makes me feel like a little more secure and, confident that Luke is going to be the character I know him to be in the movie. But what do you think about that? Like, I mean, Oscar Isaac stating that Luke is going to be, the fulfillment of where you'd expect him to go. I think that's pretty, that's pretty, we probably all would have a very similar idea of where we would expect Luke to go in terms of, him as a character. But when Rian Johnson says that Mark Hamill shows a very different side of the Luke character, what do you think he might mean by that, Rye guy?
Well, I mean, obviously this is, when we see Luke at the end of The Force Awakens, like it's not a man in a good place. Yep. Like, and the way the story is, with everything with Kylo Ren and the various levels of like detachment that the characters have from each other. And I think I think so. I don't know. I think I'm maybe on. I think we're kind of on the same page, but maybe a little bit different when it comes to this stuff. Like I'm I'm okay with you know Luke changing over time and becoming kind of broken, because when you think about it, like I don't know, like maybe he's this kid who gets kind of just pulled into this conflict basically, by the Force, essentially, like when we put all the pieces together, um in the original trilogy, it's kind of, it's the Force, it's forces outside of his control. And he was, because of his parentage, his, I don't know, destiny, whatever, he gets, pulled into all this stuff. But I think he wasn't necessarily someone who was, you know, maybe he was born a hero, but he wasn't necessarily training to be one. And he kind of just got, dumped into it. And so um, I think it's possible. And it's like it's so hard to kind of find parallels to this, but I think of like, you know, like in our world, like young musicians and like actors and stuff that you know blow up at like a young age and like peak early and develop all this power and legendary status and all of this stuff, and then they like crash and burn as adults. And I mean, sports stars, like this happens all the time with. And I don't know, maybe that's not what anyone wants out of Star Wars, but like I can see like someone who like rose to prominence on a galactic level using like supernatural forces that were dependent on like his parentage and like all of this stuff, like it becoming too much. And he tried to like, there was like a common enemy for a really long time, and then that was defeated, and then he tried to like, what's next, and tried to like raise another generation of Jedi, and that obviously did not work out. And like, yeah, I think that could, like, that as a just the trajectory into that stopping point of what happened with Ben Solo, I think that could have like a huge effect on like a person's mental state, physical state, everything. And so yeah, I mean, I guess to go back to the original question, like, yeah, I could see him being like a broken shell, and that at for a while, and that being the point where he's at in this sequel trilogy. That's not saying like he's not a hero anymore or anything like that, but when they're talking about like a different side of him, like I think the history of his experiences could lead to that place. And I don't know, it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, actually. And I think that that's a really good way of kind of reconciling those two quotes, because you have Oscar Isaac saying like, man, hey, you get Luke Skywalker back and he is who you thought he'd be, and that is what I need to hear. But then when Rian Johnson says like, hey, he's going to go in some interesting places and you're going to see a totally different side of him, I think you're right. I love the idea of a complex Luke, a conflicted Luke. I just don't like the idea of a Luke that stays conflicted to the point of inaction, or to the point that it, kind of like undoes the triumph that is the end of Return of the Jedi. And I don't think that'll be the case, but like, I actually hope that when Rey shows up on Octo, that Luke is not ready to just be like, okay, yeah, let's do this Jedi thing. Like, I hope that, part of the first part of the film is him having to be coaxed back into this, because I think that makes him even a greater hero in my eyes. If, what happened at his Jedi Academy with Kylo Ren and those pupils that were slaughtered, that needs to have an effect on him. And if it sends him spiraling out of control, or to a place where he's, lost his confidence in himself, like, good. I think that's good. And I think that does line up with Luke Skywalker we know, because he is emotional and he is attached to, and he does show love, and so that's all fine. I'm totally down with that. But I feel like there's maybe others who are hoping for him to turn to the dark side, or for him to, let's face it, the tease and the teaser is it's time for the Jedi to end. And for a lot of people that could mean, or they're hoping, I guess that could mean Luke Skywalker doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore, or that he's going to decide that everything the Jedi stood for in the past was wrong, etc., so on and so forth. Now, like I said, the last episode of the Blockade Runner was completely on that topic, so I feel like I shouldn't, bore people by continuing down that road too much. But yeah, I agree 100%. He can be in a place where he can be in a bad place, as you put it, for a chunk of this movie, or even if, into episode 9. I don't think it'll go that way, but it could. And that would be fine, because that would be a complex and interesting character. So,
yeah. And I mean, I think, like, as a Star Wars fan, as a moviegoer, I want to be surprised. I want to be shocked. I've again, and I feel like I'm like, every episode that I'm on, like, I always like bag on the EU in some way, but I feel like we got like 15-20 years of like wish fulfillment from the EU. In some places, not all of them. Like, there's obviously great stuff that I still love in the expanded universe, and always will. But there was so much of just like the obvious place to take it, like this is just more of what I like. Yeah, keep giving me just more of what I like. And but like now we're in this place where like the stakes are different. And I mean, I want a good story. I know, like, there's certain things that have already happened in Star Wars that have like turned people away from the franchise forever. And there's going to be more of those things in I felt like with every prequel, like, we lost some fans forever. And and I mean, I feel like most of us loved Force Awakens. Some people swore off Star Wars after it. And I like I want a good story. Like, that is, like, if it's done well, I am okay for whatever. Like, nothing is like off the table. Nothing is off limits to me. I know that's not how everyone feels, and I totally respect that. But for me personally, like, surprise me, shock me, like, break my heart. Like, it's okay if it's in the service of the story and the saga as a whole and the bigger picture. Like, and if I'm blown away, moved, angry, whatever, if I'm like really feeling it, in that theater in December, then I think it's going to be a success.
Yeah, no, and I could see that. I think that's well said. And that's the right attitude to go into the movie with as well. I think the key thing there, though, is that you said it, if it's in service of the story, you know,
Yeah.
Because there is the possibility of falling into the trap of let's make people feel something, and we don't have anything really natural in service of the story that will make people feel something extreme. So we're going to shock them, and that can be a cheap way of getting a reaction. I don't think Ryan Johnson, Kathy Kennedy, the story group, I don't think that we're in danger of that. I don't have that concern at all. They're not going to do that. But you know what I mean? Like that's a possibility of, it's like, well, we ran out of things. We ran out of ideas. Let's do something shocking. I don't want that, but I don't think we'll, but then again, Ryan, you're on the show, and had I produced this a little bit better, I would have thought to grab the text from that advertisement, that Japanese advertisement, since you're a resident Japanese language speaker and Japanese culture expert. I don't know if you read about or saw any of the buzz about this advertisement for The Last Jedi, maybe like a week ago in Japan. Did you see this or no?
No.
Okay, so there was like an advertisement of some kind. I don't have all the details, unfortunately, here, but there was an advertisement of some kind in Japan for The Last Jedi, and it had this text, which, as we both follow like Japanese video games and Nintendo and all that stuff like really closely. We are used to seeing headlines and or text in Japanese that can be sort of interpreted different ways in English, right? And so anyway, there's this sort of like headline that came out that The Last Jedi will have the most shocking revelation of any Star Wars film, or like the most shocking moment in Star Wars.
I did see that, and I'm pulling it up now, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, you know what I mean? Like, is that really what it says? But, Kevin, again, to mention Kevin, who's unfortunately not here with us tonight, we talked about it earlier in the week, and, his thought too was just kind of like, would the people writing that advertisement even know what that shocking revelation was at this point, if it was that shocking? And I was like, they probably wouldn't know. That's a good point. Like, so it could just be very hyperbolic on the part of whoever it is that was developing that advertisement or that promotional, piece.
Yeah. And, I'm a huge fan of superhero comics, and, which I think Star Wars shares a lot of parallels with, and this is something we see a lot with superhero comics. I mean, even this year, like both Marvel and DC both have their some really big stories going on right now, some really divisive stories. DC Rebirth has, I think they actually market it as like the DC universe's greatest secret revealed. And, if you even follow this stuff like on the periphery, it was the kind of the amalgamation of the like DC superhero universe and the Watchmen universe, which has led to some really, really cool stuff, and I love it. And then even more controversial is like, you look at over on Marvel's side, what's going on with Captain America, and him, after all these years turning out to be not exactly, but pretty much as a sleeper agent of Hydra. And in a sense, it's a whole lot of cosmic cube. But right now they have this story going where he's, Captain America has basically declared war on the Marvel universe. And that's obviously very polarizing. It's, some people have sworn off Marvel comics forever. Some people but then where I think of like kind of where I fall, like I'm loving the story. Like I think it's it's a super interesting way to go with stuff. You kind of know that it's all going to work out in the end, and that there will be that. But it's just like, how do we get to that point, and how bad did things get before then, kind of thing. And I don't know. I don't know if they'll push it that far in Last Jedi, and I think the stakes are much higher just on like a audience and financial level, compared to what the comic book reader base. But that's just, those are just things that like are kind of in the back of my head as we're kind of like rolling into this. And I don't know.
No, I think that's a good point for sure. Although, I would counter or add, I guess, that I feel like comic books have the luxury of the take back a little bit more than like movies do, and even like Star Wars novels, like the EU. I mean, it was a big deal, definitely to some people, a really big deal to sort of reset the universe or whatever it is with the novels. They sort of say, okay, we're going to start over with this, or we're going to kind of put some of that stuff aside. And I know that with like comic books and things like that, sort of feels like every 10 years or so, a lot of times things kind of get reset. But there's no, if they do something really extreme with Mark Hamill and with Luke Skywalker, it's a lot tougher, I feel like, to say, oh, that didn't really work, let's reset that. You know what I mean? Because as you said, the stakes are they're higher,
Yeah. Well, Darth Maul.
Sore subject. All right. A couple other things I want to pull out of the article quickly, and then we could jump into just taking a peek at the photos and maybe discussing one or two other things. Benicio del Toro's character has been referenced or just revealed just ever so slightly. Really interesting. I feel like there was a lot of speculation that he would play a shady character, which is how he's described here. His allegiances are unclear. This is all sounding very Lando Calrissian to me, I think, filling that kind of trope or that role in the film. But I love the fact, too, that the filmmakers are calling him DJ, even though he goes unnamed in the movie. So we don't even have a name for him. But
and they're like, you'll know why he's called DJ once you see the movie. I'm like, is he gonna like bust out like a set of turntables or something and
right
Skrillex tracks, or like what is the deal here? But I just and I know we're gonna get into the photos, but like as soon as I saw that picture of him, I was like, yes, this is what Star Wars needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to bring some edginess and some danger to it, I think, right? Like,
yeah,
it's going to be cool for sure. Yeah, and he's obviously amazing, so I think that'll be great. Yeah, that comment though, you'll know why he's called DJ. Why we called him DJ is definitely perplexing. I saw Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter mocking. Some theories have been, DJ stands for Dark Jedi. And I don't think that'll be the case. I'm hoping it has something to do with turntables rather than him being a Dark Jedi, but we'll see. I don't know. He's probably Ezra. Moving on, Laura Dern's character. He's probably Snoke, yeah. Laura Dern's character was sort of revealed. Her name is Vice Admiral Holdo. And she is a prominent officer in the Resistance. So I don't know. Sounds good to me, but not much to go on there in terms of her character. She does have purple hair. So that'll be cool too. Looks interesting, but maybe we'll mention that again when we get to the photos. Rose Tico. We didn't know her last name. Also found out here that she has a sister who is in the Resistance as well. Who's in another scene or scenes in the movie. So that is cool. I thought that Kelly Marie Tran was great at Star Wars Celebration, and I'd already heard like the buzz from other actors and stuff saying like, oh my God, she's amazing and she's going to be breakthrough in this movie. But I thought she was really charming and funny at Star Wars Celebration, and I'm excited to see more of her, obviously, in the movie. And it was confirmed in this article, and this has been rumored pretty heavily, that she's going to spend a lot of time with John Boyega, with Finn in the movie, and that they're going to be on a mission behind enemy lines. So trying to infiltrate some First Order base, maybe. Not sure, but that should be interesting. I've got a feeling, as most people do, that Rey is going to be off doing her thing. Poe Dameron's going to be off doing his thing. Finn will be off doing his thing, and he'll be with Rose, it looks like.
Yeah, and Finn, something I don't think you have in the notes here, but Bacta suit.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what we see in the trailer. Is it's a Bacta suit. Although he doesn't appear to be underwater in the Bacta suit, but maybe it only has to go up to his back or something. I don't know. I guess not underwater, but he does not seem to be completely submerged in Bacta.
He's not in his underwear floating in like a weird test tube thing.
No, unfortunately not. But yeah, I'm assuming that'll just be early on in the movie. It could maybe even like the first 20 minutes or something. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like based on this and other comments, other articles, that he's going to be. They're not going to just sort of like brush his injury from Kylo Ren under the rug. Like it'll be significant, and maybe that's probably going to be part of his test as well. Is like, how do you come back from a really significant injury? So, but John Boyega is wildly charming and just engaging and amazing. So I'm sure wherever they take Finn is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So. There's also some information about Canto Bite, which is this like occasion. Well, this place, I guess, where people hang out in tuxedos with aliens. We could talk about it when we look at those pictures, but I love the quote from Rian Johnson here. Let's create a playground basically for rich assholes. So that was cool.
Yeah, it reminds me of the way it was described. I immediately thought of the casino zone in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That's kind of what I'm picturing in my head.
Yeah, you may be the only person who immediately thought of Sonic the Hedgehog, but no, that's a good association. Rian Johnson mentions James Bond, so that'll be cool. And actually, Pablo Hidalgo, in one of these other articles that we'll pull up in a minute, talks about how these people that are involved in this sequence or in this place have found a way to sort of exist above or outside of the, I guess, like galactic conflict between like the First Order and the Resistance and all that kind of thing. So sounds like maybe an elite like ruling class or super wealthy kind of not going to worry about what the plebeians are suffering through elsewhere kind of situation. So it'll be interesting to see how that fits into the plot of The Last Jedi and where and how that factors in. Maybe something to do with Snoke. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, it's definitely a very different. Just what was described there is a very different sort of setting. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is like Coruscant, but even that, like, that is like right in the middle of the conflict because it's, the bureaucracy of everything. But typically the locations in Star Wars movies are more rural, I guess. So
and more elemental, kind of like it has to do.
Yeah,
for sure.
So this will be interesting. I mean, like the dens of like depravity that we see in Star Wars are like typically like dive bars. Like we don't see like the Las Vegas of Star Wars, even though like Las Vegas is pretty divey in its own way, but like I don't even know what it would be like Dubai
I
or
was going to say Abu
something, I
Dhabi or something like
guess.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and my thought too, and this is probably like we'll see the movie and think back on this at the way off, but
Mhm.
I don't. Part of me wonders like where does the First Order get its funding and resources from?
Mhm.
And like I can imagine like an elite, 1% like ruling class, like super wealthy, who would be interested in funding like an evil organization like the First Order, and then maybe would not necessarily outrightly or publicly support something like that, but would financially
Mhm.
support it. Um, but like I said, that's probably nothing to do with it, but that's just like where my mind went.
No, I think
Is like,
that's a good point. I mean, especially I think the the funding of movements is something that's very on a lot of people's minds these days. And yeah.
well, there's this other article we'll look at here like real quickly in just a few minutes, but it's like The Last Jedi photos, which secrets are revealed is the title of it, and this is on Vanity Fair. Go check that out if you have not seen it yet. And there is some discussion of the whole idea of like social commentary in The Last Jedi, so we'll come back to that
Mhm.
if we get a chance, because that's where my mind went to. So
Yeah.
last thing here, this is a big one. Man, we could probably talk about this all night, and I feel like we've been chatting here for a while, so I don't want to spend too much time necessarily. But Leia's role in the sequel trilogy, kind of heartbreaking to read. Kathleen
Mhm.
Kennedy says that Carrie Fisher was having a blast. The minute she finished The Last Jedi, she grabbed me and said, "I'd better be at the forefront of 9." Because Harrison was front and center on 7, Mark is front and center on 8, and she thought 9 would be her movie, and it would have been. Is the quote from Kathleen Kennedy.
I know.
Um,
Ugh.
really sad to hear that. It's I mean it's great to hear that she was feeling confident and having a great time and wanted to be more involved, because I think there was some maybe little concern. I sometimes felt like walking away from The Force Awakens and paying as much attention to like the behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff, that maybe she wasn't super confident or always super happy about being back in the spotlight,
Mm.
because it'd been so long since she'd really been involved in this kind of thing. And um, it seems like her, and there's other comments to support this in the article, but it seems like Carrie and Rian Johnson had a really great relationship, and that she had a really great experience making this movie. And I know she was acting in a TV show right before her death. I think that's when she was flying back from England, because she had been working on another show there. And so it is good to see or to hear that she was enjoying being in front of the camera and being involved in acting again. And that's a nice thing to know about her kind of final months. But yeah, just the possibilities, I guess, of what could have happened with Carrie Fisher and with Princess Leia in Episode 9. I'm personally, I think they're making the right decision to change course, because she's gone, and that's just the reality of it. And I don't think there's really any way around that. But I know there are differing
Mhm.
opinions on that choice on the part of Lucasfilm. But I don't know. It's just a difficult situation, and it's a really tragic, obviously, and
Mhm.
sad situation. Um, but the speculation ever since Force Awakens has been, each of the big three would get their own movie, and the Force Awakens was Harrison's movie. In
Mhm.
this quote, it's kind of confirmed that The Last Jedi, and the title suggests it, but The Last Jedi is more Mark's movie than Leia's. Or more Luke's movie than Leia's. So pretty crazy, pretty big moment that Kathleen Kennedy would confirm that it would have been Carrie Fisher's movie in a lot of ways, Episode 9. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty to speculate on there in terms of where that story would have gone for Leia and where it'll go now, but I think that's probably best saved for another night, another discussion at some point. So we can leave it there if that's cool with you.
Yep.
All right, let's scroll through a couple photos. I am going to share my screen and
sorry, audio listeners.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But we're not going to spend, too much time on this, but there's just, there's definitely like fun stuff in these images. So we'll just kind of scroll through them quickly. Obviously I love this first one of Luke and Rey on Octo. I don't think you can see Luke's gloved hand in this one. But that is something that was clearly noticeable in the other pictures. For a second, I thought there was a bird up there on top of that hut. I don't think that is, but I was almost wondering, is our little caretaker creature up there?
Yeah. So who took all these pictures?
Oh, these are all from Annie Leibovitz, who has done all of the Vanity Fair Star Wars issues.
Yeah.
And you knew that, but you wanted to make sure we gave her the credit she deserves. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. The hut looks amazing. Luke and Rey look amazing. Luke's costume is awesome. I love the fact that they're wearing similar colors. It looks great. There was some talk of him having like darker colors in this movie and things like that. And I'm not seeing it in these photos. I'm liking what I see. A cool image of Rey here. Although this one, I don't know. It feels. Have you seen the Spider-Man Homecoming poster?
Yes, I have.
You know how that one screams like this is photoshopped? This one, it's got. I think maybe it's just a little too touched up or something. It feels a little airbrushy to me, which I probably should not be sitting here critiquing Annie Leibovitz's photograph because. She's iconic and these are amazing photos.
No, I think this is an amazing picture. I think it is a little jarring. It's almost like too HD. Like it's it's really like everything is in focus. And I think it's there's maybe like, even though it's it's like a still life, it's like there's almost like an uncanny valley to it, in a way. So I kind of get what you're saying, but like
it just, there's something about it where it feels like it can't be real, like all those elements couldn't have been in that same frame at that same time the way they were. I think they were, but it just it gives this feeling that they weren't for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, and I think like this is something like I notice like occasionally in like, it reminds me how I feel about like a lot of like nature photography sometimes, where you're like, you see like this just like this like insane picture of like a wolf in like a snowfield or something, and you're like, that looks shopped. Like it just like looks so like crazy and like and there's like so many just like natural like lighting effects and everything, and I think it might be the lightsaber that throws this. And there is kind of like, like Rey is in a like fairly unnatural pose here. But I think that might be it. But
and I think too, like her orientation or her, I don't know how you want to phrase it, but like she's very like straight, vertical, like at a right angle kind of thing. Or these are not, any of these terms are correct. None of these terms are correct. But you know what I'm saying? Like she's like up and down straight, and then the Earth is like tilted. You know what I mean?
Dutch angle.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Although the camera's maybe the camera is, and I don't know, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's those two things. Like she's not tilted the same way that the Earth is, or that the camera is, or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it
this
looks a
is
little strange too.
this is one where you really needed Chris here.
Chris Stevens, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
you
Yes,
needed
we
Chris
did.
here more than me for
We
this.
did. However, I'm here to tell you that I don't know how many people noticed that Luke Skywalker is deceased at this point in the film, because over there in the right corner you can see his clothing. You know, he did the Obi-Wan thing. He disappeared and his clothes fell down. And no, but that looks like Rey's staff and like a bag or something there. So cool photo. The sky's dark. Yeah. Who knows? It's ominous.
But there's also some light in the horizon.
Ah, yeah. I do like that they are animating, or however we want to say, like putting the special effect on the lightsaber. I think that's
cool. I think it's cool. I think that is like the major thing that throws it and gives it kind of that uncanny valley feel, though.
It could be.
And I feel if it was like her in like some sort of like yoga pose or something, like that would have been like a much more digestible shot.
And I think there's probably some truth to that. Yeah. And this one too, like in the Falcon, it's a cool photo. I love seeing Rey and Chewie together. But I have a feeling that it was a green screen behind that window, and then that stuff has been shopped in, and that's fine with me. But it's definitely, you can tell this one's kind of created through a combination of photography and special effects. So
yeah, I love what this image represents. I feel like Chewie's a little derpy here.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, Rey just looks awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And these photos,
she does.
Yeah, for sure. And the photos are pretty stylized, I guess you'd say, right? Like there's a stylized kind of vibe to them, because this one's got that sheen, or like whatever you want to say. Again, it'd be nice if Chris was here, because I lack the learning for discussing these photos in detail. But
it's got kind of like a classic sci-fi feel to it.
Yeah,
like,
I could see that.
Probably something, like almost like a throwback to back to 40 years ago.
Yeah. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I am just now noticing the way the lightsaber is on her hip there. Is that a lightsaber? I think it is, right? But the strap that she's using to, kind of attach that, it looks a little Han Solo-y, doesn't it? The way it's wrapped around her leg there, and like that's almost where Han Solo's like blaster would go. And I feel like that's an homage to dear old dad, maybe, but it's cool. All right, this photo is great. We have Carrie Fisher, Oscar Isaac, John Boyega, Kelly Marie Tran, and of course BB-8 together. I love the fact that they decided to place Poe Dameron and Finn right next to each other, with Poe Dameron's arm on Finn's shoulder, kind of just to get people's
even Vanity Fair is shipping it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that's cool. Leia, of course, looks so regal, and
that is like, man, when I started seeing these pictures like trickling out of her, like the what do you even call that? Like a gown, a overcoat, a shawl, like a trench coat, like whatever that is, like that to me looks so prequel trilogy. Like that is like something you'd see on like Naboo. I feel like.
Yeah.
And I like it. I think it's great.
Sure. I think it looks great, and I think it's cool too, because like I think Carrie Fisher famously described her clothing in The Force Awakens, her outfit as being I think she described it as like gas station attendant chic or something like that. It was very pragmatic. It was very, I'm a general, and I'm it's more like what Kelly Marie Tran is wearing in this photo. But she was Princess Leia Organa, and so they really moved away from that in The Force Awakens, but there seems to be some kind of reconciliation of those two aspects of her life, maybe.
It's a huge shift.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I think I'm like hyper aware of this right now because in March, Lindsay and I went to the Star Wars costume exhibit
Mm,
at the Denver Art Museum, and just just spending a few hours there, like reading the all, like looking at all the stuff and reading the, like, thought process behind it and all that. Like, it just, it really kind of, it was something I always knew, but it really solidified to me the like the layers of meaning in every costume, and how that's been something that's been intentional since, the original, since A New Hope.
mhm.
And and how it became even, like, and it just kind of built through, like, the prequel trilogy and everything. So yeah, so like I noticed this and I was like, wow, that's a huge shift.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it looks like there's some association with like maybe mourning, like the process of mourning or something in
Hmm.
that clothing too. So, for sure.
But
Uh,
back to real quick before we move on.
yeah.
Um, the Rose Tico
Hmm.
here, like, man, that mischievous smirk
Yeah.
on her face, like, is this the first time we've seen her, like, um in her Star Wars outfit?
Well, there was one great image of her in the Last Jedi panel at Star Wars Celebration.
Okay.
But that is the only other image I've seen that I know of her from the Last Jedi.
Okay.
So, and
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yes. Yep. Now I can remember that. Okay. So
yeah,
yeah. But I don't know. I feel like this says a lot about her character, just in this image, and I'm really
yeah,
looking
for sure.
forward to
Because
it.
like everybody else has this like pretty serious, sort of dour look on their face, and then
Uh-huh.
she's smiling and she's got her arms crossed, and yeah, no, I think she's going to be pretty fun, pretty interesting.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of really weird looking aliens in these photos. Aliens, and then I've also been noticing about these photos too, not to be like ageist or anything, but like lots of really older people. And I think that's um, maybe something to do with the whole idea of these being like the very wealthy and powerful,
Mhm.
um, people who have amassed a great deal of wealth and power throughout their life, and that kind of thing. So, um,
So when I looked at this image, it it reminded me, wasn't at and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but wasn't at some point in the process for Return of the Jedi, wasn't wasn't David Lynch slated to direct it?
I wouldn't go so far as to say slated to direct, but
Or
George
he
invited
was
him.
approached. He was
Yes,
approached to direct it.
yes, George and David Lynch spent a day together, I think, at Skywalker Ranch, and yeah, George was interested in having David Lynch do the movie, but I think David Lynch decided that he was not
He
interested.
declined
Yeah,
because he saw it. I think, if I remember, and this is something, like, I mean, I remember reading this like 20 years ago. So, but like, I think he was just like, no, George, this is yours. Like, I couldn't. This is your vision.
yeah, I think so.
Like, but so alternate timeline where that happens and David Lynch does direct a Star Wars movie. Here we go.
Yeah, it's got a weird dark vibe to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a lot of just in, like, uncomfortable
Yep.
looking people.
Yeah, and some of these characters feel like they would be very at home in like Mulholland Drive or something, right? Like
Hmm.
I can definitely see it.
Yeah,
And this
a
is
lot of tall men.
yeah, yeah. And this is part of it's like a two-page spread. So there's the other image down here, which is like would be the other page. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what is actually taking place in the movie. At this point, obviously some kind of ball or gala or fundraiser or something. Um, but uh, but it's probably going to be pretty wild. So I'm definitely looking forward to see where this story goes, or this part of the story goes. So there's this dog looking Scooby-Doo looking dude up here.
Yeah,
Pretty interesting.
that's like that one is like kind of nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Like a few of these are like really unsettling.
Yeah, how about this one back in the corner with like the yeah, pretty
and
creepy.
and that actually reminds me of if you've seen the FX show Legion,
No.
which is excellent. That's kind of what that character reminded me of, a character in that show that's very unsettling. Yeah,
it's pretty creepy. It's too late at night to be looking closely at that one.
Yeah, let's move on.
But here's the droid shop, the creature shop. Very cool. Nice to see Anthony Daniels back in the suit there. So but otherwise I don't know if there's too much to glean from this one besides, we're gonna have some good looking droids back. This is a nice photo, black and white. It's great to see Luke and Leia in the same frame together, and I think like this is the first time we see like this, Luke's gloved hand there really prominently. I guess it's just a glove, but I don't know. There's something really striking about that as well, I think.
Yeah, Gary.
No, Gary's there. Gary's and there. Is it Millie, I think?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Gary was everywhere that Carrie was. So, beautiful. Is a beautiful picture of Billy Lord and Carrie Fisher. Billy is back in The Last Jedi, which is good to see, and obviously just a beautiful picture of the two of them. Billy Lord was amazing at Star Wars Celebration, which I think we talked about on the show. And this was amazing. It's a tough one. It's sad, very obviously, maybe a little tough to look at this point, but it's also great to see them together again. The article talks about how they had a almost like a sibling like relationship, and the sequel trilogy gave them occasion to sort of be back in each other's lives more prominently. So
I like I want to move on from this because it's still pretty soon from the passing of Carrie, and it's stuff like this, it stirs up a lot of emotions, but something I do want to talk about from the article, maybe on a lighter note, is that I was I didn't know about. I certainly didn't need to know about it, but after reading this article, I definitely do know about
Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher making out. Yeah.
That I don't know. That's something we all know now.
Yeah, pretty funny.
Some makeout sessions.
Yeah, for sure. I think I had read about that in the Princess Diarist, maybe.
Oh, okay. I haven't read that yet.
Or I think maybe Mark Hamill mentioned it in his tribute to Carrie Fisher at Star Wars Celebration. One of the two. So I had learned about that pretty recently myself, and was surprised to read that. Yeah. But no, it's funny to think about them,
excuse me,
on the set of A New Hope, kind of testing the waters there. So, but I think ultimately she spent more time with Harrison Ford.
Which was I think that bomb dropped last year.
Yeah. I mean that had been widely kind of believed or maybe understood, but she totally spilled the beans in the Princess Diarist. So
again, like none of our business, but they have made it our business.
Yeah.
And well, I guess that's something we all know now.
Yeah. I don't know. Cool picture. Then again, I feel like they're still trying to keep this character under wraps for the most part. You know, her back is to the
Laura Dern.
camera. Yeah.
Yeah, again, those David Lynch connections.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And
she was one of his go-to
mm,
actresses. So
yeah, and I feel like you know she seems like she has some kind of smile or you know maybe a smirk on her face, but otherwise like she's not even looking at us. You know, so we really can't read very much into her as a character. I think it is interesting to make the initial reveal of a character one in which her back is turned to the audience. You know, maybe that's
yeah,
not intentional on the part of like the producers and the director of the film. Maybe that's like a Vanity Fair Annie Leibovitz choice, but then again,
hmm
I don't know. I've got a feeling that Lucasfilm is probably pretty involved in the selection of these images and how they're going to be presented. So
yeah, and I mean just this like backdrop. uh,
yeah,
like what even is that? Again, like it's David Lynch. It
yeah,
just keeps coming back to that to me.
yeah.
And maybe it's just like Twin Peaks is back now and all of it. But
No, I mean,
here's a good picture.
yeah,
Here's a great picture.
yeah.
I
Leg
love
up,
everything about this.
leg up,
God,
collar popped. You know.
is like one eye open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is cool. This is cool, and I have a feeling that he might be involved in the wealthy planet with the tuxedos and all that business. But I mean, doesn't look like he's of that upper crust, super wealthy class. I mean, this is like a much more of the Star Wars lived in universe vibe here. So
Mhm.
yeah, it'll be intriguing to learn more about this character. I have a feeling we, you know, probably will just start to learn about this character in episode 8 and then probably find out more as the saga goes on. But
Again, for our audio listeners, we are talking about DJ
yeah.
right now, the artist known as DJ,
Yeah.
DJ Del Toro.
DJ Lot, yeah, he's looking very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cryptic, very mysterious. So definitely excited to learn more about him. Kylo Ren here. Han Solo's son and Slayer, he's described as in the caption, which I think he's also described as Spawn.
Spawn,
But no,
that
Han Solo's,
upcoming reboot
yeah,
film from Todd McFarlane.
yeah. But no, but Han Solo's son and Slayer, I think that's well phrased, and you know, not too much to glean here necessarily, but
No,
just got that crossguard lightsaber back in full effect, and looking forward to obviously learning more about him. And an image of him here with General Hux and Captain Phasma. And I think the Captain Phasma element of this photograph is by far the most interesting part, both because she does not have her helmet on and because she has this new weapon, the staff. So we'll see. What are you hoping to see from Captain Phasma in The Last Jedi?
So, I mean, kind of, when we're looking at these characters, I, really what I want to see, and, I've said this before, in The Last Jedi is I want, higher stakes and more threatening villains. I, I love Force Awakens. It's a top 3 Star Wars movie for me. But I don't feel that I didn't feel the villainous threat that, like, I mean, obviously you're never going to top like Darth Vader in A New Hope. But I felt like Snoke was kind of Snoke was what Snoke was in that movie. More of just like it was a scheming hologram. But and then Kylo Ren was this I don't know, like you you almost like empathized with him to a degree. Um, I mean, some people did, some people didn't. I, kind of did. I felt like he was a conflicted, interesting character, but not like a real threat, especially considering how he kind of got whooped by a newbie in the film, in like the climactic fight scene. Hux, I guess a parallel to him would be like your Tarkin um, esque character, and he had presence, and I like him, but he didn't ever really quite climb into that. Like he didn't. I mean, they blew up a planet, but it wasn't quite the same as like blowing up like Alderaan and like the impact of that. And I think kind of the general consensus, and sort of the way I feel too, is that Phasma was maybe a little underutilized in Force Awakens, and again, not much of a threat, despite how like cool and menacing and amazing like her design and armor and everything was. Like, again, she just kind of got just got kind of like thrown in a trash compactor. So I mean, that's when I look at this picture, like I'm, you know, maybe like I want to see like these characters, being like, okay, we really underestimated this group the first time around, and now like we're going to, whether it's like we're going to be more brutal, or just them like upping their game, upping their schemes, whatever it takes to make them feel like a threat. Like that's kind of what I want to see from all three of these characters, because we keep like, it's, we're adding like more and more protagonists and like heroes. I mean, there was like a huge loss with Han Solo, obviously, but if Luke comes in as a hero character, it's, I don't know, like it doesn't really paint the resistance as an underdog resistance at a certain point. So yeah, I mean, I think just as soon as I see this image, like all I can hope for is like them, the villains upping their game, I guess.
I think that's a really good point, and I don't know if I'd really thought of it that way, but I think that's totally true. And I think it all comes down to Snoke, really, because Kylo Ren was pretty intimidating in The Force Awakens, but not. I don't know. I mean, I felt like he was pretty menacing in that snowy scene at the end of the movie, and I mean, he did kill Han Solo, his own father, so he was pretty intense. But when the buck stops at the top, right, and Snoke was not really what he needed to be in The Force Awakens. So, and definitely Phasma, like the way that she was written out of The Force Awakens was pretty weak, I thought. So, I thought there's a ton of potential in all of those characters, and I actually liked every moment that each of them was on screen. But there is something about the way it all came together that isn't as threatening as it could have been, and I think that probably all comes down to Snoke for the most part. So, and obviously they're not ready to really, kind of reveal anything about him at this point. So
yeah,
but I am very curious to see where that goes. So I think we've been at it here for a while. We've been recording for quite a while, so we're going to get ready to wrap it up in just a second. But real quickly, I want to make you aware, Ryan, and our listeners aware of two other articles on VanityFair.com that I think you should check out. One is called "Inside the Troubled Past: An Exciting Future of Rey's Lightsaber," and this features a discussion with Pablo Hidalgo. And this actually made some waves recently because Pablo Hidalgo talks about, and Lucasfilm talks about in this article, about how, from a marketing perspective and the way that the lightsaber is discussed internally at Lucasfilm now, it is Rey's lightsaber. That is Rey's lightsaber. It is no longer referred to by Lucasfilm as Luke's lightsaber. It's Rey's lightsaber, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And if you're one who is hoping for Luke Skywalker to see some action in The Last Jedi and to maybe use a lightsaber of his own, I think there's some information in this article that would lead you to believe that Luke might be back in action. And if he is, he won't be asking Rey to borrow her lightsaber. I'll put it that way. But it's a fairly lengthy article. There's quite a bit in there, and I think it's worth checking out. So. And I think the Vanity Fair coverage has been really great, but I don't think they've done necessarily the best job of making everybody aware of all these, not all these, but these couple other, smaller articles. So if you get a chance, check that out. And then,
do you know, are those articles in the magazine?
I don't know. I have not been able to read the magazine yet.
Okay.
I think it's
but it is out on newsstands now, right?
No. The digital version is out, as far as I know. And the actual magazine does not come out on newsstands until the first week of June.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you're interested in getting the actual magazine, there is a deal on vanityfair.com, which is pretty good. You get a year subscription to Vanity Fair. If you're interested in like reading the magazine outside of the Star Wars issues, but in addition to getting that subscription, you get a copy of all 4 of the issues of this magazine with the 4 different covers, and you get a poster that has these 4 covers on it as well. And I think that's all for $30 or $35. I'll link to it here, but those 4 magazines and the poster, even if you're not interested in reading Vanity Fair throughout the year, like that's probably worth that amount of money. But I thought that was a pretty cool deal. So
yeah, I mean, Vanity Fair has great writing throughout the year. Like, I mean, I read stuff on the site like outside of like when they do Star Wars stuff. So that's probably a pretty good deal. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then the last one here, I just wanted to point out before we go, there is a story on vanityfair.com called Star Wars Last Jedi Photos, which secrets are revealed. And they sit down with Pablo Hidalgo again and talk about some of these things. And so it's just like Pablo kind of going more into detail on some of these photographs. For instance, I talked about, Pablo saying that these are people who've carved a life for themselves where they can live apart from the galactic struggle. That came from this article. So there's just there's just more information about those photos and some things like that weren't in the main article. So it's worth checking out. I think there's another one actually at vanityfair.com. I don't have it open now, so I'll not put it up at the moment, but I think there's another one which is like 5 things to expect in The Last Jedi and 5 things to not expect. So, or something along those lines. Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff on vanityfair.com, I guess. And I think it's worth going and checking out. And if you're like me, you may not be aware of it at the moment because I don't know that they necessarily promoted it all. I think they kind of primarily promoted the photographs and the main article. So
yeah,
definitely go check that stuff out.
Cool.
All right. Well, we should wrap up there. Probably back in maybe 2.5 weeks. I'm going on a little vacation here coming up. So might be 3 weeks before we're back here with the Blockade Runner. But until then, you can follow us on Twitter at Blockade Run. And Ryan, your Twitter handle's been up tonight at Braun Dwarf on Twitter. You can check out other content from us at blockaderunnerpodcast.com and, of course, subscribe on YouTube, as we are now doing all of our podcasts live on YouTube if you want to check them out that way. So thanks very much, Ryan, for joining me tonight. And
it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you know it, we'll be watching The Last Jedi. But sooner than that, we'll be back with another episode of The Blockade Runner.